to pose a question. Then Ram will take over and explain more to do with the OAD call for proposals and other sections coming after that. So, okay, one moment. So, science organizations have over the past few years, demonstrated their desire and intent to, somehow, make an impact on development. But the development context is not always clear for non-social scientists, right? So we put up this together. We put together this course at the Office of Astronomy for Development. It's called Introduction to Development Economics for Non-Social Scientists. So today I'm just taking some, bits and pieces out of that course and just try to link some of those few concepts to the work that we do at the OAD. But I also want to, to leave you with this idea that astronomy as a science, its development impact is quite difficult to discern, and it is the same in other sciences. The causation link to development is not always clear, but we can talk about association. Why do I talk about this? Because as people who will be running projects, many times you have to think about what's the impact that my project is making. So you don't have to worry yourself too much about a causal link, but if you can just prove some association, then it's fine. So here I show some work by Martinez in 2018. So here they show the number of American Statistical Association sections on the vertical axis and on the timeline on the horizontal axis. So they are showing this positive association between an increase in the number of statisticians or an increase in these associations being associated with important breakthroughs in statistical computing, for example, around about the 1970s. As we have more statisticians.
Sorry, Tawanda, we're still on the first slide on your screen.
Are you still on the first slide?
Yeah, the cover slide.
Do you see the second screen now?
Not yet. I think you need to go full screen. Oh, maybe you must share the others full screen on your Zoom. I think you need to stop sharing and share again.
How about, okay, I was actually suggesting that maybe you share the screen and then.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, yeah. Let's do that, yeah.
Hold on. Okay, can you see the full screen? Tawanda?
I was muted, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Can you see the full screen?
Okay. Yeah, I can see the full screen, yeah. So, I mean, this is what I was just talking about, where we see this positive association. As we have more statisticians, we saw this, breakthroughs in machine learning and data science around about the 2010. So we are saying in any field, in any scientific discipline, by having more scientists, we have some breakthroughs which are important for human development, which are important for humanity, right? So there's this important link and important correlation between science and that development. So as astronomers, the work that you do is required and is actually important for development. The next slide, please, Ram. Okay, so what is economics, right? So economics is really about the basic economic problem, which is just about you have unlimited needs and wants, but the resources are finite or they are limited. So that is the basic economic problem. I think so. This plays out everywhere in all organizations, in households, in countries. For example, at the Office of Astronomy for Development, we can receive, plenty of proposals in any given year, but sometimes we are constrained by our resources that we actually select, a few which we can actually, which we can actually fund. So that's just about economics. It's about scarcity. It's about opportunity cost, and it's about choice, which brings us to the important concept of the production possibilities frontier. Next slide, please, Ram. Okay, so why is this important? So it's a basic economics concept. You don't have to worry much about it. It just hypothesizes an economy that can produce only two goods. That it can be housing on the vertical axis and education on the horizontal axis. So you have to make a choice in terms of whether you are producing at point A or you are producing at point B or at any other point that is on the frontier. So the frontier actually represents the economy's full employment. If we deploy all our resources, we are able to produce on this frontier. But guess what? Because of technology, if there's an advancement in technology, this frontier will actually shift outwards. Once it shifts outwards, it means that we are actually going to be able to produce more, given the same level of resources. So technology is important. I talked about that outward shift, right? But at the same time, labor is also quite important, right? So I just give this simple equation, Q being quantity produced in an economy. This can be houses, whatever it is, right? So the quantity of production we can achieve is dependent on the amount of capital and the labor, right? So I find that many of the astronomy for development projects, they encourage students to venture into STEM subjects, because STEM subjects, they produce, they allow the producing of more labor units than previously. So if we invest in encouraging students to venture into STEM, we're actually increasing and improving the quality of the labor, which would then have an impact in terms of the the national income, the national production you're doing it in whatever community or society. So STEM is important, and if you can use astronomy to achieve some STEM objectives, we are actually helping towards achieving economic growth and prosperity. So that's why many of our OAD projects have got this big education component. Next slide, please, Ram. Okay, so in measuring, development, we have to be, we have to take account, differences in factor endowments, right? So in measuring development impact, we have to there's this what we call heterogeneity of projects, and also heterogeneity, between geographies. That's just local conditions. So we've got this project in India. It's a it's a very successful astrotourism project that has raised tens of thousands of dollars over the past few years. But we've also got some astrotourism projects in the US that actually generate like millions of projects in terms of revenue. I mean, millions in terms of revenue. So you don't want to necessarily compare different projects that are in different areas. So even as you develop your projects, as you improve your project, you have to be appreciative of some of these things. So let's talk about some of these differences between developed countries and developing countries. So in developed countries, for example, we've got low labor abundance, whereas in developing countries, we've got a very high labor abundance, right? In terms of capital, in developed countries, we've got very high levels of capital, whereas in developing countries, we've got very little capital. What that does then is that because we've got the base is so low in developing countries, for example, a little bit of capital can actually have some domino effect. If you can go to the next slide, please, Ram. Okay, so here I just show this example here for example. So I've got it. If you can just go back, Ram. Okay, yeah, on this slide. So we've got a developed country and we have a developing country, right? So although we have invested more in this developed country, like 30,000, we are only generating like 10,000 in terms of astrotourism revenue. In a developing country, with our 2,000, we can actually achieve 1,000 in terms of revenue. So in terms of higher marginal benefit, this project in the developing country with a little outlay of investment actually has got more benefit than this project in a in a richer setting. So the point there is that even very small investments can actually have got a big they can have a big effect, especially in developing countries. So I want to give this example, which I call the bull and plow analogy. So if you give a bull and a plow to a farmer in a developing country setting, in a poor resource setting, you find that their production can actually increase significantly. But if you do the same in a richer setting, the farmer might actually just eat the bull and put the plow in a museum, because they already have got this mechanized equipment and everything. So they are using technology already. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Ram. Okay, so we want to talk about some common, some of the important development challenges that we have. Next slide, please, Ram. Because many of the OAD projects, they aim to address some of the development challenges. So why am I giving these examples? Because I just want to make the connections clear, which might actually help in implementing projects or developing further ideas. So many development challenges are linked to market failure, right? So market failure is a situation whereby the market, so there's demand and supply. Sometimes the market fails to allocate resources efficiently. So let's talk about hunger. So people can be throwing away food in one locality, right? But a few blocks away, some people might actually be starving because there's no efficient mechanism to get excess food to the needy because of the friction imposed by distance or borders or just lack of awareness, right? So astronomers can, for example, just create, an app, that makes people alert in terms of where they can find food, just to break some of those information barriers. So hunger is caused by market failure. In some parts of the world, there's excess food. In some parts of the world, there's just no food at all. If we can go to the next slide, please, Ram. So let's talk about pollution. So pollution is, is caused by it's actually caused by negative externalities. So that's what we want to talk about. We want to talk about externalities. So externalities are third-party effects, right? So if a person is driving their car and the car is smoking and you inhale that smoke, it's a negative externality. It's a third-party effect. You are being affected, but you don't have anything to do with that car. It's not your car or anything, right? So to deal with some of these things, air pollution by large companies and stuff like that, some scientists have developed sensors and monitors. So this is actually some of the role that science can play in development to minimize this challenge of pollution. Next slide, please, Ram. Poor public health, right? Why do we have poor public health in many, in many settings? Because health is a public good, right? So this is also an example of market failure. A public hospital is a public good. No one has got the incentive, to prioritize it because they will not consume it, privately. So that's why medicines are out of the reach of many due to their price, because of the pharmaceutical market, which has got many buyers but very few sellers. It's a monopoly or an oligopoly market because the sellers are so few.
Tawanda? Can anyone else hear Tawanda? Is it just me?
Oh, it's the same. Sound suddenly went away.
We can't hear. Even I can't hear anything.
Dropped out. All right.
Hi, Ram. I'm back.
Okay.
My internet just failed, so I'm actually using mobile now. Where was I?
Okay.
I think I'll have to skip over some of the things. But where was I?
You were just talking about health as a public good.
Okay. So yeah. So let's just move to the next slide, please. Okay. So I bring this example. So there's what we call perfect competition. So this is a vegetable market, right? Where you are a price taker, because if you bring your wares, you can't sell at a ridiculously higher price because you just lose business. So the company is a price taker or the seller is a price taker. They take the price that's on the market. There are many buyers and sellers, and there are no barriers to entry, and information is perfectly available. You know where to get the vegetables. There are no barriers to entry. It's an open market. So this is an example of perfect competition, and because of these, prices tend to be low, right? But it's different from a situation where we've got very few sellers. If you go to the next slide, please, Ram. Okay, so imperfect markets, they are characterized by barriers to entry, right? Because you've got no knowledge. You don't know the formulas to create those vaccines or to create those drugs. There's a very high regulation and very high startup costs. There are few or single seller and vis-a-vis many buyers. Therefore, the firm is a price giver because there are very few or just one firm. So they give whatever price they want, no matter how high it is. So they tend to overprice. And because of that, access to healthcare can actually be, difficult in many settings. Next slide, please, Ram. So I think I talked about the pharmaceutical sector already. They've got many people dying of avoidable deaths and sickness because of that imperfect nature of that competition. Next slide, please, Ram. Right. So this is my favorite slide. So at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, there were shortages of ventilators, shortages of almost everything that you can think of, in these hospitals and everywhere. But then scientists played a big role, right? So companies that produce, ventilators, for example, sometimes you just don't have the information in terms of how you can create, produce and manufacture a ventilator. But scientists came together, astronomers from South Africa, they put their heads together and actually produced this prototype ventilator. So what has science done in this instance? They've provided information and reduced, the barriers to entry into this market, and actually provided some life-saving ventilators, as you can see on this picture. So the role of science can never be underestimated in development. Next slide, please. I'll just quickly go through the last slides. So, in terms of poor governance, in developing countries, for example, it can be difficult to make politicians accountable, for example, because, for example, you don't even have the electricity, right? So maybe just installing some solar panels in a village, it's a development project. People are now able to they can be able to fact check things. They can be able to improve their education, their access to opportunities because of that simple technology of a solar panel. Next slide, please, Ron. Okay, frictional unemployment. So there's what we call frictional unemployment when you change from one job to the other, right? There are a couple of reasons why you can experience some period of unemployment, right? But the most important thing is you just don't know where your right job is, right? So if when you then see scientists, creating some applications, programming some applications that can actually match job candidates to jobs, it's a big, role played by science. Next slide, please, Ram. Okay, let's talk about vaccine hesitancy. I think this is my last slide. So, during this pandemic, I think vaccine hesitancy, I think it's more or less wearing off, but it was a big issue. People, hesitating against, getting the jab, right? So obviously it was propagated by fake news, but it also has got some theoretical foundations. So there's this seminal paper by George Ekaloff called The Market for Lemons. So lemons are second-hand vehicles in some jurisdictions like Australia and other places. So when you buy a second-hand vehicle, no matter you bring your mechanic or what, the seller always has got all the information. He's got more information than you ever might have. So it is the same thing when you talk about these vaccines. People might be thinking, oh, maybe this vaccine company knows something that I don't know. What is in this vaccine? They're not producing, they're not providing all the information. So this vaccine hesitance is a real life problem, is a real life development challenge. It has got theoretical, background and roots in economics. So I won't, go beyond this. Thank you very much for your time. But I also want to mention when you talk about this vaccine hesitancy, things like this, I think as scientists, we've got a leadership role to play, within our own circles, in our communities and things like that. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tawanda. So just in the interest of time, I'll keep going. So like I said before, for those of you who joined late, all of this information is available on the website. So we'll just provide a quick summary today in the first half of the webinar, and then in the second half, you'll hear from some of our review panel members, as well as a few of the past funded projects. So about the call for proposals, our office is called the Office of Astronomy for Development. So the projects we fund need to satisfy two main criteria. They should address a challenge related to development, and they must use astronomy. We always like to say astronomy for development is about the people, not the stars. So many of the applicants, project teams who apply are people working in astronomy, people curious about astronomy, amateur astronomers, professional astronomers, communicators, and so on. So all of these people are very familiar with astronomy, but maybe not so familiar with development. So we do encourage interdisciplinary team. So since you're dealing with very human problems and human situations, do consider joining forces with social scientists and people in the humanities. So what projects can you apply for? Can you apply for education or outreach projects? So there are other IE offices for education, for outreach. Our office deals exclusively with development using astronomy. So you can use an education or outreach intervention, but it should be towards the pursuit of a development related goal. So the education or outreach activity should just be a tool that you use to achieve a development related goal. We have also funded astronomy training projects in the past, but again, they must show a clear link to development. So how will your astronomy workshop, let's say you want to organize a astronomy training workshop for students in your region or country. So you must clearly lay out how that training will achieve some of the sustainable development goals, how it will improve certain conditions, development related issues in your country or region. The third point here is, can you apply to buy a telescope? So if it's just a telescope that you want, then this is probably not the right call, the right application for you. But if you want to use the telescope towards the aim of achieving a development goal, then yes. So again, like I said, all of these must be tools that you use in the pursuit of some larger development related goal. Oh, and this year we are including a special theme on basic sciences for development. You may know that 2022 is the United Nations International Year of Basic Sciences for Sustainable Development. So in that spirit, we are including a special theme. So it's not just astronomy, but any of the basic sciences are welcome to apply for proposals this year. So our budget is not big. It's about 120,000 euros, and we fund about 15 to 20 projects with that amount. So typically projects grants range from 3,000-4,000 euro to about 10, 11, 12,000 euro. Most projects are funded for 1 year, but you can apply for a multi-year project, and these must be multi-year project by design. What I mean by that is that we don't want to fund projects where the same activities are repeated year after year without any particular additional value being added. So if, again, going back to the workshop example, if you want to run a astronomy workshop for your students and in the pursuit of a development goal, and you want to repeat that for 3 years or 2 years, you must clearly show what is the value being added in the second year and the third year. Why do you want to do it for 3 years instead of 1 year? And the answer can't be because you want more money to run those workshops. So let's say you want to evaluate how much change is being created by your project, then maybe it makes sense to run the same activities over a longer period of time. Then you have to spend significantly on the evaluation component as well. Just a few pointers. I'll also ask some of the reviewers present here to say a few words, if that's okay, in a couple of minutes. So first thing is that please propose a project that responds to a need in your community. A lot of people have ideas that they want to implement. Maybe it's a project that you wanted to run for a long time, and then you try to get funding for the project. So it's always difficult to approach from that perspective. You already have an idea, and then you try to retrofit it to different types of funding calls. I mean, that is possible, and we have funded some projects like that, but we always encourage you to look at the problems or challenges in the community, what is the need, and then try to find a solution, try to propose a project that responds to that need. We always talk about the SDGs, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. In our question, in fact, in the application, we ask projects to select up to 3 SDGs that your project will tackle. But keep in mind that choosing more SDGs doesn't mean your proposal has a better chance of selection. We are in fact encouraging all applicants to look at the SDG indicators. So there's a link for that in the application itself. These are the specific changes that are listed under each SDG. So that will give you a better idea of what SDG will be relevant to your project. And please do check what has been done before by other OAD funded projects, by other people around the world. Maybe even projects in other fields might be more applicable. And please do keep your project plans. The proposal must be flexible enough in case of any COVID-related disruptions. One last point about outcomes, outputs, deliverables. So we fund projects that try to create change in people, in society, in communities. Of course, all the projects run certain activities to achieve those changes. So those changes are called the outcomes, and the activities can be a workshop, training, any other initiative that you run. So we are interested in your activity, but what we are most interested in is the outcome or the change that your activity will achieve. So going back to the workshop example, through your astronomy workshop, what changes do you want to create in those students, or do you want to create in that university or community? That is what we are most interested in. After all, astronomy for development is about development as well as using astronomy to achieve it. So we are always most interested in the outcomes. So don't focus too much on the activities themselves. We do need details of the activities, but we are interested in how you're going to use those activities to achieve the promised changes. So make sure you address both in your proposal. So I will actually now call upon the reviewers. Let's see who's here, to share some of your wisdom. While I'm going through the list, anyone wants to take the lead? Any of the members of the review panel? Peter?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just
Yeah.
making sure I have my connection again. So basically, I sent also some inputs before because originally I was planning to travel today. So yes, I mean, you can read them there. But I think things that I look out for when I look at these proposals, I mean, first there's this thing about, being creative and do not just do what sounds like it has been done lots of times already. And I've noticed also with quite some proposals that they seem to be a bit narrow in their focus on who they think about, both for the people who could be involved in the project, I mean, both the people you want to address, and then also to think what I'm also, a weaker point of some proposals was, okay, what happens after? You have this 1 year or whatever, and then what? Yeah, sometimes it's very clearly described, sometimes it's really not at all described. And coming myself from a job where I'm leading project, I'm responsible for satellite, I find it really important that I can sort of see how you will achieve things. I mean, that's this SMART goals is management slang, but there's still a lot of useful thinking in that. Yeah, to say, okay, what do I try to achieve? What do I specifically try to achieve? Can I actually measure that in some way, estimate it? I mean, it's not kilograms and meters, but can I really demonstrate that I can achieve it? Evidently, the relevance is something that's basically the most important from the start. If it's not relevant, why even bother? But then also that you really consider how much time it is, because again, from people come from a science background often, and I describe myself as scientist first, often the time is the axis which people are most flexible on. Yeah, while I'm living in a world where time is inflexible, mostly, and the goals must be adapted to be reasonable within that. So, and then again, I can't help when I look at some proposals to think, okay, I'm not feeling sure if they can reach this within this time, or valuable or useful, but do I really see that this all will be done within a lot of time? Yeah. Or are they running immediately in a situation that they can't finish? So that's what from my side. So on the one hand, think free, but then you should actually, it's a good strategy for creativity. I learned in a course once, you think wild and Then you try to go back to reality, but you must build both. Yeah.
Thank you. Claudio, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot. I think your presentation from Sami and Peter's one comments were covered a lot. I mean, what I like to see it starts with a good story. So if it is easy to understand, I mean, it feels right immediately, right? So if you read the proposal once and you have to read twice and 3 times, then it starts to feel strange. So the way that is written, it matters a lot, right? The flow of story, okay? Then you can actually judge the idea that is putting forward in the proposal against other ideas, right? So the goal or the need that the proposal is willing to fulfill, it is clear from the start. Then the referee, of course, might like or not, that's a different story, but at least your idea is understood from the beginning. It's a very important point, right? That it is cognitively easy to understand. And following what Peter just said, I care a lot about if the proposal is feasible, okay? It might be a great idea, it might be a really important issue, but you read across the proposal and you don't feel that the team has the expertise or that the sort of the steps to achieve that goal are clear, explained, all those things. So you don't feel that team can deliver what they are actually promising to deliver. Okay, this is for me is a key issue. I think it is key in many areas of sciences, as Peter mentioned. And one last point for me is that the composition of the teams. So sometimes you are willing to deliver things, for instance, experience for people with disabilities, for instance, okay? But your team doesn't have anyone with that expertise or doesn't have anyone maybe with that disability that you want to address. So you might be well intended to do something, but you're going to do something which is completely off, okay? So, if you want to prepare material for schools, and among your team members, there's no one with experience in teaching or in education, for instance, okay? So the composition of the teams, for me, it matters a lot, and sometimes that is not clear. So I think those 3 points are the ones that I look. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Really good points by both of you. Mirjana, I'll call upon you later on when we talk to the past projects. Nicole, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I do. I agree fully with what Peter and Claudio have said. Especially also the story is very important, and I think because if there's not a story, it's really difficult to understand what it is about. And I think also in that story, if you can convey your enthusiasm about why you want to do this project, and also how you think you're going to empower your target group, and what your target group is going to do with it. If that can be elements of your story, it really helps for us to understand why we should be funding your project. Because I sometimes struggle. I know there is a tremendous space limit, and there is a reason for that. And so it is really hard to put your story, but sometimes it's more important to convey your enthusiasm than to have a whole background of your team or your university or all of that. That can maybe go to a second stage, but explaining really why you think this is the thing to do and what the people that are going to benefit from it really are going to get out of it, that's very important, I think, definitely in the first stage.
Thank you. Priya?
Thanks, Ram. So I would agree with what all the earlier speakers have said. Everybody has said the right things. But another important thing which I want to talk about, which I think they missed out, was the budget. Justification for the budget is also, I think, a very crucial thing, because obviously one needs to see where is the money being directed, right? What is it being spent over? And like, in workshops, a lot of the money just goes in refreshments and things like that, which are not exactly the goal of the thing. So I think the budget justification is also a very important factor, the feasibility of the whole thing. And I think what is even more important is how long will this thing continue, in the sense, if it's a workshop also, it shouldn't be that it's a one-time event where everything just ends after that, right? There has to be some way in which it continues, maybe as simple as, you have a Slack channel or something like that, with which you build up the group, which can again, interact in future and stuff like that. But in some way to sustain the effort, so that even after the event or the activities are over, there is at least something which continues, right? With and without funding, because typically the funding would not be there. So then there should be something which will, continue taking the thing ahead. I think those are two important points too. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone. I'm actually going to move to the discussion with the past projects in a minute. But are there any questions from anyone so far? Any questions, you can type in the chat or just unmute and ask your question. Okay. Okay, if not, let's move to the discussion with past projects. I invite Amidou, Shweta, Luisa, if you are here, and Mirjana.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
See Mirjana.
Yes, I'm here as well. Yeah.
Are you here? Luisa, are you here? Okay, I see we have a question. Sorry, let me just take these questions. What's the minimum acceptable time period for the project? So projects are expected to complete their activities in 1 year. Most projects go over by a few months, so 1 year and a few months. But you can apply for up to 3 years. So there's no minimum as such. Most projects take at least a year to implement from what we have seen. Another question by Stella Zemlin: can we add supplemental information or photographs to our proposal? No, unfortunately not. It's text only, and there are character limits on each of the questions. So everybody needs to really work on optimizing their answers. Supplemental information is also not common or encouraged, because again, to give a fair chance to everyone, we ask that you stick to the character limit given to you. Oh, sorry, there's more questions. I would like to inquire if software development can be considered a basic science developmental field. So when we say, we don't like to exclude any proposals right off the bat. If you have a good enough motivation, and if you can explain how that's linked to development, and what kind of basic sciences are involved, then yes, please do apply. You can also email us if you can provide more information. The last question is, if you're funded for 1 year, is it possible to apply again? Yes. We have funded several projects multiple times. Okay, sorry, let me come to the past funded projects. So again, this is for potential applicants to hear directly from people who have successfully got funding from the OAD. So I just have a few questions prepared. Okay, since we only have 20 minutes left, can I ask everyone to give a really, really short description of your project? Introduce yourself and a very, very short description. Let's start with Amidou.
Yes, hi. My name is Amidou Sogo, and I'm a postdoc in astronomy, basically. So the project that we've submitted and that got accepted is about an educational project in Burkina Faso. So for those of you who don't know, Burkina is a small country in West Africa. And sadly, it's been subject to terror attacks during the past few years. So basically what the project is about is really using the power of astronomy and the tools of astronomy to really go and promote education in camps where people that have been victims of terror attacks are basically located. So in a nutshell, it's using astronomy and its tools to promote education in internally displaced people's camp. Yeah.
Thanks, Midu. Mirjana?
Yes, can you hear me? Okay, perfect. So good morning, good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Milena Povic. I work as a professor and researcher at the Ethiopian Space Science and Technology Institute. And last year we submitted the proposal that is titled Cycles or Empowering Women in Science through Astronomy. So the idea is to, on one side, train a group of 30 to 40 girls that will come from different parts of Ethiopia and from different backgrounds to train them through astronomy in science STEM, including the basic introduction in astronomy, the astronomy for development, importance of science for development, and then as an example, using the big data in science that through astronomy we get. And then use the girls to be actually promoters of STEM when they go back to their community. So the program is for the secondary school girls. And through this training, we want to improve the knowledge of the girls, but also their leadership skills. And when they go back to their communities, as I said, to promote STEM to all their classmates, so boys and girls, but that the girls are those who are actually promoters and leaders of STEM. In the same time, we will develop the material that the girls can use, that this material can help them to promote why STEM is important and why it's important to have more girls and women in STEM in the future. And then that material will be translated into 3 languages. So as I mentioned, the project is meant for, it will be conducted in Ethiopia, but if we find that it's successful, we are planning to propose it as a pilot project to be conducted in other countries as well.
Thank you. Shweta?
Yes, thank you, Ram. So I'm Shweta. I'm founder and director of Astronera, and I've been working as science communicator since past 11 years now. So our project that is being funded by OAD is guide training workshop for the tribal children. So in India, I worked with a lot of tribal children and I saw that they are interested into astronomy. And I thought that with this training, with our project, we can enable them and help them get into the field even further, not just academically, but we are especially giving them skill training so that they can conduct their own stargazing programs and earn some money through that, earn some remuneration through that. And furthermore, we are going to continue giving this support by also onboarding some mentors to help these students further, and we will also be onboarding some astrotourism resources, some resorts or organizations like that who will organize stargazing programs and include these tribal students that will be trained under this project to come and organize the stargazing program for them. So yeah, this is the basic idea.
Thanks for the introduction. So Shweta, I'll start with you for this question. Did you have experience in writing proposals before applying for the OAD call, and how is the OAD proposal different from the
Right. So I have written quite a few proposals before. Few of them were for state and central government in India itself. So I have worked with Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, and my experience writing proposal for them was extremely lengthy, to be honest. So they have elaborated proposals, lots of points to cover, and they look into it with such minute detailing, but there is no word limit on anything. So the more elaborative you are in writing the proposal, the better it is for them. I have also written proposals for the Royal Astronomical Society of England, as I'm their fellow as well. With them, it's similar to OAD, but I think the process with OAD has been really easy to write the proposals. Again, because of the word limits, I'd be honest with that.
Yeah, that's good. Mirjana?
Yes, I did have experience previously in writing proposals. I think that's helpful. But even if people don't have experience with writing proposals, I think with the material that is available, it's really a good starting point. And then I would suggest that people can always get in touch with the OAD members for getting more information, the reviewers, and even for those of us who got the projects approved. I have to say that from previous proposals that I have the experience with, the OAD proposal, call for proposals, is really specific. First, that there are 2 stages, which I appreciate, and then that you can actually dedicate small amount of time writing the proposal once you have very clear ideas about all the points that are there. So what is the project? What is the impact? What do you need? What do you want to achieve? And what are the clear deliverables? So I think it needs a bit more of contemplating the whole idea and all the points, but then writing the proposal is not taking so much time. And I do appreciate that, in that aspect is also different because of the limits in the words that are there. That is not very extended text that we have to write, but it has to be very clear and very concise. No, so it's not easy for people that don't have experience in writing these kind of proposals. But I think with the material that is available, it's possible to get the good proposal to be funded.
Yes, I think my experience is very similar to those of Mirjana and Shweta. It's basically the same. I've written proposals before, not development project proposals, but these were proposals in different type of collaborations. And my feeling was that it is very, the OAD call makes it very easy and very, I would say, simple to write a proposal in which that it's all the points are given. So it's like, like Mirjana said, if you have a very concise idea, then it makes it very easy because the questions are very specific and you can just dive in and lay out clearly what your goals are.
And what's the main difference in how you think about writing a scientific or outreach proposal versus the OAD proposal from a let's say project design point of view? What was most different compared to a scientific or outreach proposals? Who wants to start?
If I can go with it, I think for me it was the fact that what I liked about this OAD proposal and what makes a big difference for me is that you have to link it directly to every, to the SDGs that you want to target. So it's like you have an idea, so you have to think about that idea and how you can impact any, SDGs that is concerned by the proposals. And so once you have that, then the full, the skeleton of the project is there. And basically all you have to do now is, go to those small sub points and clearly, specify what you want to do and how that project is going to impact that and, SDGs and how. And so for me, that was the biggest difference. I'm sure there are more that, Mirjana and Shweta can add.
Yes, I absolutely agree to Amado, and I would like to add that as Ram said, while writing this proposal, it allowed me to concentrate so much on the people and how it's going to benefit them. Rather than thinking what I am able to give, I could think more about what they will be receiving and how it would help them. So I always had the SDGs in mind and, some indicators of how those SDGs would be achieved. And I realized that, rather than focusing on just one particular goal, there were multiple achievements that were coming out of, this whole system, I would say. So I think I really allowed that this whole process really allowed me to think from their perspective how I am adding to their development through these SDGs and through my project.
Okay. Jana, you want to add?
Well, I agree with all previous. I mean, basically, just to highlight that we are talking about two very, very different proposals. Writing a proposal in science has very different objectives than writing the proposal for the OAD, that the objectives are those that have been already mentioned, related with the SDGs. And these SDGs are very well defined. When we write a science proposal, we don't have anything that is so well defined that we have the guideline, we have the call of proposal, but that call is much, much normally broader. And what is important is the excellence of the science that we are representing in our proposal, having putting the cutting-edge science, going to the latest results regarding the science itself, data, infrastructure that will be used or developed, and so on. So we're talking about very, very different proposals, so it's hard actually to compare, in my opinion. What I would like to highlight is that even without having the experience of writing the science proposals, one can perfectly write a good proposal for the development and OAD. Just because we have these, on one side SDGs that are very well defined, they are so broad as well, but well defined. There are so many aspects in which we can, through astronomy, contribute to these SDGs. And then the material that is there available through the OAD website, I think, is also very helpful. So even if people don't have the experience, I would like to highlight that still they shall not be rejected immediately, that it's much easier task, I would say. And also the extension of the proposal is already by itself the different thing. The science proposal are much, much more extended than when we come to the OAD proposal.
Yeah, I agree. Any other tips from the three of you? Mirjana already listed some hints, some tips to write better proposals. Amidu, Shweta, anything that would help potential applicants?
Well, I would like to add a few more things that I believe that are really essential as advices. That at least these are some of the things that I followed. When I applied for the very first time for the OAD funding. And I think my connection was not very good previously, so maybe some of these points have been already mentioned by reviewers. But I think before you start to write a proposal, what has been mentioned previously, like having the clear idea of the project that is impactful is very important. But to come to that, one has to know the reality in its own in her or his own surrounding where you want to apply the project, because you have to justify that. But then also what can help is really revising the past projects that have been approved, because that will give you the idea about what are the aims of the OAD, what kind of projects are supported, and also give you the idea of what all can be done, And starting with, before starting with proposal, just to get prepared, revising all the material that is available is extremely recommendable. And going through the call without still hearing it is extremely, it's a must. It's needed, because that will give you the idea to then think about what you want to write, because those words that are there it doesn't mean it's easier to write if the number of words is smaller. Actually, it can be even more difficult, because it means that your ideas have to be clear, concise, and complete, that you leave as less questions as possible. So to revise the material, revise previous projects, respect all the recommendations that are there, because for many points there are recommendations and suggestions, so take them into account, and then try to think about the project that really can clearly mark some or several of the SDGs.
Right, I absolutely agree with Mirjana, and I would like to add that, as Priya said, it's about also, how the efforts are going to continue. So I would say that, as per the speakers before said, I think taking this into account is very important, and the past proposals, reading through them would help you. So with the story, as people were discussing before, it would be really helpful, at least it was for me, if you write down the whole story of what you want to do, what people are going to get, and write as much in detail as you can, and then pick up the bits and pieces of it that fits into the OAD. It will help you out in keeping away the things that are not important, understanding better about what you are going to do. And another thing in my experience was that I wrote my first proposal with such a huge dream that, I'm going to create this big impact and, going to do a lot. But then later, through the process of writing this proposal and talking with the fellow people who were writing the proposals, and also Ram, I realized that it's more important to create impact, even if it is in some small number, and keeping the data. So with your project, if you get more data that would be useful for future, that's more important. So when you're writing the proposal, also think of where exactly you're generating new data that would be helpful for further research or further development. And even if the goal is not too huge, but even if it is for small number of people but creating a big impact in their lives, then also I think it fits in the OAD's view, and that would be great.
Yes, I think that's a very important point. Make your goals attainable. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. You don't want to change the world. You don't want to just want to make an impact that is small enough to be noticeable. One thing that I wanted to stress on also is the fact that the project has to be about people first. You're not writing a proposal to go and teach astronomy, to develop astronomy. No, you want to use astronomy to develop, to impact development, and that's very important. And I think that's one point. If you really, if you get your ideas really clear about that, then you have a very higher chance of succeeding. I remember there is a project that we wrote before this project. There is one that I collaborated on that didn't get accepted. And the reason was because the project was too science focused. So it was more of a research project than, a development project. Not because the project wasn't well written, we put all the argument that, that we could put, but the fact that it wasn't the way that it was, we sold the story, it was more about, advancing the research on some area rather than, impacting people. And I think that this is something that you have to be really mindful about. And yeah, and I don't know what else I can add. I think these are some of the points that I wanted to stress on.
Yeah, thanks for that. Any other questions? We have a minute or so. Actually, we don't have much time, but if you have questions, please write them in the chat. So I also want to add that before you start writing the application, please do spend some time reading everything on the site, all the links, looking at some of the past projects, the examples like Mirjana mentioned. And also, I mean, there's not much time until the deadline, but hopefully you have already been in touch with the people, all the stakeholders who are going to be impacted by a project. So if you're trying to run a school project, hopefully you have already been in touch with the school, talk to the teachers, talk to some of the kids and so on. So you've done some of the groundwork before applying for the call for proposals. And the other point about the proposal writing experience, so If you don't have any proposal writing experience, or if you have only some experience in writing proposals, don't be discouraged. It's a skill that you can develop with time, and we also provide support for people who have limited experience in writing proposals. So do email us if you need that support. Again, there's not much time, so please do contact us as soon as possible. Okay, I don't see any other questions. All right. So
maybe just one thing that maybe was not mentioned, I think is also helpful, that if there is any previous work that you can mention that can support the idea that you have about the project, then mention it. That's very important, you know. Any previous work that you did in a similar field, in the same similar community, that somehow shows that there is a need for the project that you are planning to conduct, that you are proposing. Try to find those fields in the proposal where you can mention that, you know, that it's based on the previous experience.
Yeah, that's really important. Okay, there are no more questions. Then thanks everyone. Thanks to the reviewers, to Shweta, Jana, Midu, and all the potential applicants. Please do send us an email if we didn't answer your question, or if you have more questions. So it's projects@astrofordev.org. It's also on our website. And yeah, hope to see some great proposals this round. Thank you, everyone.